Hey now, everybody. Welcome back. Brand new Take Aim podcast, and excited to get this show out. And as always, guys, this episode has been brought to you by Huntstand. If you have not had the chance yet to download and upgrade to the pro version, use the code TakeAim10. But as well, check out some of the content Huntstand puts out via on the app or YouTube. But this past week, they put out some field tests for broadheads, and it's some of my favorite content that comes out all year. So make sure you check that out. It's a great video. All the top brand broadheads are in this video, and it's just really cool field testing what they do. And I'm sure you guys will absolutely enjoy it. But excited to have my buddy back with me today, Blake Garrett, and my buddy Blake and myself go over just what we do, what Blake really does, the system he uses for summer scouting, and that transition into fall. So it's an awesome episode. Make sure to follow Blake, check out what he does. And as always, guys, hope you enjoy this episode. It was created for you. And as always, deer season never ends. We'll see you guys again next week. All right, guys, we are live, brand new Take Aim podcast, and happy as always to get a new show out, and excited to be back. I'm trying to say Black. I'm back with Blake Garrett. So what's happening, Blake?
Not much, buddy. How are you?
Good, man. Excited to talk to you, and it's kind of perfect timing. I'm actually headed out to go walk a new farm. Either I'm going to leave this evening or tomorrow and head out 2 hours away from like where near I hunt. But I know you got a couple new farms, so it's just a good time to talk about like the game plan and kind of what you do when you get a new piece of ground.
Yeah, man. So yeah, it's a great time of the year with all of it, and usually get a bunch of pictures and get to use some big tine and get to put it to work and put some multries to work and see if we can find some big deer. But we last year had some great deer early. I had one really big deer that just disappeared on me. I didn't know a lot about him, but he was there, went hard-horn, stayed around till about the beginning of October, and then kind of disappeared on me. And I went to the grindstone this year, and I was trying to figure out some surrounding properties and kind of options for where that deer went, and tried to put some things together. So we did that and got a piece of property together that was kind of close to where he was. And so we added that to the list of farms, and then we also picked up a couple other pieces kind of in our area too, of just kind of, I guess I would say different sections of the county. Something I always try to do is try to kind of diversify my property. You talk to guys who want a big piece, they're like, oh, I want 1,000 acres or 2,000 acres in one chunk, and that's good, and it has its benefits, but it also has its disadvantages, is my opinion. And I try to just pick up some farms kind of spread out throughout the countryside, within one county or two counties.
Right.
You get different genetics, you get different access, you get different, you really can control pressure a little bit better by doing all that stuff. So yeah, this time of the year typically finds us doing that exact thing where we're trying to strap on some new properties and figure out what's going on and find some new deer.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that I think is key to what you just said there, Blake, is benefits and cons of having a big piece is, once you learn to hunt a big piece, doesn't mean you can hunt it the right way. You know what I mean? Like you can hunt it the way it allows you to hunt. So with having multiple pieces like that, it does allow you to do a bunch of different options on weather, wind, or even, like elevation-wise. I don't know how much your thermals come into play out there, but, with certain properties do sit different. So there is a lot of benefit to that, and sometimes I've been victim of that. Like I had one big farm until I lost it here in Michigan where, dude, I could only hunt it one certain way. And when how the season goes, Blake, there's only maybe, if we're lucky, 50 days a year or 50% of the days a year that work out perfectly that you can hunt. So when you diversify those properties, you can start to stack that up a little more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's And there's a lot of stuff you look at. We always have the fear of EHD, which is always the month for us here in August that it's going to hit us if it's going to hit us. And what I've found, at least for Central Missouri, for the most part, will almost never just get completely plowed with EHD. It's like it's really spotty, and we may have a farm 2 miles away that gets almost a half inch to a full inch more of rain than what another farm does. So I think that's kind of why that happens. And it's another thing where, we've had EHD hit one farm but not even touch another farm. So it just kind of, it's not really, I guess, putting all your eggs in one basket is kind of my mindset with it. Try to get it around there and just diversify things as much as you can. And you're absolutely right. I mean, every farm is only has certain access and certain huntability, and it's definitely nice to kind of diversify. And guys can kind of get in trouble if you don't do your homework and you don't properly assess what's on that farm and what's using that farm. You can kind of get in trouble where you're just bouncing around aimlessly, or you're spending the rut on a farm you really don't need to be on. You need to be on a different one. And years back before cell cams and really trail cameras were really common, you could get bit by doing that and being too spread out. But man, nowadays with mobile cameras, I can tell you what's going on every farm from my couch,
Right.
So it's up to date. So it really makes a lot more sense to me to, try to spread out.
That's
and, right now, I mean, like we talk about, kind of first step for us is always when I get a new farm, I just look at access. We talked a bunch about this, but I really start trying to build that I guess kind of the status on the farm and low pressure, and try to let them understand that when they hear the side-by-side come in, it's the feed wagon, I'm going to bring some food to them. It's nothing bad. I'm not hanging sets now. I don't do any of that stuff now. All I do is get a new farm. We find a new farm. Okay, I got to figure out how I can get my side-by-side into where I want to go with the least intrusion and without crops, damaging crops, because everything has crops on it up here pretty much, and kind of get me in and out to where, like, for instance, it's so hard to explain without showing it on a map, but for instance, if we have a farm and it's got one draw that runs through it, and the draw runs completely through the farm, but it runs north and south, I try to look for access kind of in the middle of the draw if I can, coming in from either the east or the west, where I can come straight in to where the draw is the narrowest, and that's where I'm going to set up my cameras and my feed or my mineral or whatever I'm going to do.
Okay.
And what that allows me to do is I pretty much take out the chance of any deer bedding right there, with it being the narrowest point of the draw. I mean, I really like it if it's a draw that I can, like, see through. You know what I mean? We have it a lot here where typically if there's trees, it's because there's a creek and they can't farm it. So, there'll be a creek that runs north to south. And when you get to this spot, I can literally get in. It's kind of a buffer in the crops where one side's beans, one side's corn, but you got a field road that runs right down the middle, right to the draw. And you just go straight in from the east and drive straight into that draw, and essentially I drive right down to the timber, and there's a spot there, find a tree, start dumping big time. And a lot of times on my first dump, like when I first dump big time out, I'll make sure and kind of spread it out a little bit more. If you do that, they'll take care of the vegetation for you. A lot of guys, I've seen guys take like weed eaters in there and hatchets and all kinds of stuff. But if you just take a bag of big time and literally just kind of spread it through that grass, all the way to, you start your pile and then you kind of spread it out. I mean, it'll, in a week, those deer will have that stuff, and those coons and everything will just have all that grass gone. So it's kind of an easy way to let them do the work for you. Do that, and then, fill it up, and run some cameras on it, and get out of there. And I always run mobiles on my piles to start off to kind of judge. It's telling me how quick the deer respond to it, tell me kind of how much pressure there is in that area. If I go in and dump a spot at noon, and by 3 o'clock I've got does on it already on the first spot in the first day in the daylight, then, hey, we're probably hunting some pretty unpressured deer, right?
Right.
And it also tells me that I'm pretty close to where they want to be, right? So that's a good sign already. And typically, I mean, I can tell you that, I don't know, probably a handful of times ever, I've actually had bucks hit the feed within the first 3 days. But typically it doesn't happen. I mean, usually it's young bucks, does for the most part, and they just kind of get that sitting there. But then when a big deer, he'll usually hit it at night. That's the first time he does it. And he'll come in, and he's a lot calmer because there's been other deer in there. And once he locks onto that pile, then, there's your recon. And we just try to make sure we keep those places full, through what we just went through, which is we're kind of winding down on that field trip phase we talked about. And so I really made sure where I was feeding about every 3 days just to make sure my pile stayed full, because in that field trip phase, you're getting brand new bucks that have never been through the area, as opposed, they were back in the rut, but they haven't been through it all summer. And on those farms, they don't know that pile's there, even though it's been there for 3 months. So you got to make sure it's got something there for them. So when they come through, they hit it. Every now and then I've kept a buck, from field trip phase to where he keeps coming back and hitting the feed throughout the summer, and then, hopefully you can capitalize on that through the fall. But yeah, that's what it's about right now, is just spread out. I got stuff everywhere. I've got piles everywhere. I've got cameras going everywhere, and just trying to figure out, okay, where are the shooters and what farms are we going to really try to sink in on and spend the time on,
Right. Blake, when let me back all the way up for just a moment, but when you get a property like this, let's say it was, a friend of a friend and you got permission, or you knocked on a door, met the neighbor just by chance. I mean, do you literally just open an app, look at, an aerial photo, and then dissect like, hey, this is point A to point B, where I want to get in and start doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's for me, it's about, honestly, I think guys struggle with, they try to go in too tight. If they're like, I just think deer are bedding here, so I need to, I can drive my truck to here, but I can walk, 400 yards down this corn edge and put it here, and they're going to be there. Like, there's just no reason to do that. I mean, let the attractant do the work for you. And, like here right now, a lot of our big deer are living in corn. So you get this kind of misconception in your brain that you need to go to the biggest block of timber. When you have to walk down a corn edge to get to that timber, you're running deer out of that corn because they're bedding in the corn right now, so they're not in that timber yet. So, it all goes back to, I always preach about being flexible and being really open-minded, and getting a deer right now is not what getting a deer in the fall is going to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So nothing I'm doing right now has anything to do with patterning. I'm not trying to find his bedroom. I'm not trying to find where he's feeding. I'm not any of that stuff. I literally am just trying to get pictures of him to get intel and figure out kind of a roster for what the age structure looks like on the farm, what deer are using the farm regularly, and what the pressure level is. That's the only goal of summer. You know what I mean? That's really it.
Yeah, for you. It's
100%
structure
that.
And quantity, quality is what
it is. Yeah,
so
especially on a new farm.
When you do this as well, Blake, we've talked about it before on the podcast, but just to reiterate to people, like, that just talk so much smack about baiting and whatnot. This is a tool that you use, and luckily for you that, like, you figured out a system with Big Time that works so well. But so when you go in, do you preferably, Blake, like, do it on a certain wind that you know will drift kind of in maybe one of those creek bottoms or the low part of that timber where you think there might be bedding, so it kind of speeds that process up?
Not much, no. I mean, I really don't. For me, it's more about the thing I really pay attention to, I guess, the most is time of day that I'm in there, because it goes back to the pressure stuff. So I always feed between 11 and 3 o'clock in the daytime. I don't want deer to be on their feet. I want them to, a lot of times if a buck is laying down and you drive by him or he winds you, if you get to the pile and say he's laying downwind of the pile somewhere and he winds you, he may get up, but he's not going to just absolutely blow out of there. He's 9 times out of 10, he's probably going to just stay laying there. And I found a lot of success and a lot of, I get a lot better response on my piles if I do that midday stuff than if I were to go in the evening or, or early in the morning. We just noticed that, I think you run into those deer on their feet and you never want to surprise them, right? You want to just stay as predictable as possible.
Right.
So I always do that. That's just one thing I've done, and I think it's really helped with getting daytime pictures now. Guys that work, obviously, and have to be, work till 5 and can't get out there till that evening, or they, I would suggest doing it on the weekends in the middle of the day, stuff like that. Just try to find a system that works the best for you that will kind of knock down the amount of time you're on the farm when the deer are most active. You don't want to do that. But for me, it's just more about I focus more on time of day than I do really wind direction, because I don't really care, honestly, if they smell me if I'm in there. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of the whole plan behind the knowing I'm coming, understanding my presence, right. And seeing a positive thing out of it. So I don't. You know what I mean?
More as a, like, do they smell the big time faster? Like you're actually working against yourself, but allowing them to smell the big time. So they're like, hey, there's something here we might want to eat. But I absolutely get what you're saying when you're saying, like, I use this time basically to be the least intrusive, and that's why you do it.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you, like, there's some draws I feed that are pretty much, I've done for 4 years, and there's a lot of bucks at summer in these draws, and I would tell you confidently that there's bucks bedded within 50 yards to 100 yards of that pile, and I know for a fact my wind blows directly at them when I go into that pile, and I don't see any less response time or more response time off of that. Does that make sense? Like, I mean, those deer, they kind of know, I mean, there's just, if I could take you one day and show you, like, I literally do the same thing, and to the point of, like, pulling my side-by-side in, backing it in the same way, like there's a path, you know what I mean? Like, right. The tire tracks stay on the same thing, and they back in. I leave my side-by-side idling the whole time. I don't shut it off. Just everything's the same. You just stay really predictable, and those deer kind of become complacent with that because they know what to expect, and they don't ever get surprised, Yeah. So
surprises, basically.
Yeah, no surprise at all. Yeah, and I don't wear rubber boots. Like, I don't spray down. I'm going to tell you, when you're feeding between 11 and 3 o'clock and it's 98 degrees, you're covered in sweat. You know what I mean? Like, right. I know for a fact they smell me. There's no doubt because I literally do nothing for scent control, but that's what I want right now. You know what I mean? That's the whole point of this building that up, is that they're going to tolerate that because of the advantages they get off of it, which is there's no danger to them at all. And it's kind of no different than if you've noticed on my Instagram, like that barn, the barn that I've been running videos in. That's a man-made structure where guys loaded hay into it, right? But there's no negative. There's been nothing negative for those deer. Yeah. So those deer get the benefit of being in the shade, being cool, having wind blow through there. They can relax. They're on dirt, no bugs, no ticks. And those deer have learned over time that it's a great place, and there's 10 to 15 deer a day that go into that barn.
Yeah, that thing's amazing.
And it's unreal. And you know, for me to walk into that barn and literally, I mean, it's like a paparazzi show in there now because the content's just so cool, and I want to cover kind of every part of it. So I've got like 3 cameras in this barn and some around it, and run on video and some on pictures and whatever. But those deer never stop using that barn with my intrusion going in there.
That's great.
And I think it just shows that, you know, that farm has been one farm that I've had for 5 years and done this same thing on for 5 years. And I think it just shows that they tolerate it because there's no negative associated with me on that farm. You know what I mean? There's I mean, the only negative is the deer that we kill, and thank God I've been efficient enough to any deer that did have a negative response is dead. You know what I mean? So it's if you know, I understand everybody's situation is different, but it's just something to think about it because I think guys can kind of implement it, you know, on their own way, on their own farms, to where they can see benefits out of stuff like that. And whether, you know, if you can't feed in your state, it may just be a mineral thing where you're just giving them a little bit of mineral every time. I mean, guys will laugh at me, but like, if I got to go check on, you know, I've got obviously some cameras just on mineral licks, and if I got to go check that camera, I'll take literally like a I don't even know, like probably 2 cups of mineral, and I'll dump it right in the middle of mineral lick every time.
Right.
It's just because I want something fresh to be there associated with my sink coming in, so they just understand that. Hey, you know what I mean? That's a good thing. So. Yeah, that's kind of the whole, I guess, aspect of it. Whenever I look at wind, I used to do that. I used to not check cameras with the specific wind. I used to put cameras in bags, you know, in Ziploc bags. I used to spray them down after I got done checking them. I used to, you know, all that stuff. I found out that, man, you don't have to do that if you just follow a process.
Right. Yep. And
and
like you said, that guys need to think of it in the same manner as like your bow, the sight you use, your broadheads. It's a system, just like your camo and your clothing. Like, you bought this for a reason, and it has a system to it, and you use it in that system. It's the most effective. And I know, like, the couple of podcasts we've talked about, you know, some of this feeding and some of your scouting, Blake, that all of this relates to a system. Like, every step you take is part of the system. And to be honest, every time we talk, it's kind of mind-blowing because, like, even you still get excited, like, how effective it is.
Yeah, it's really crazy. It's just crazy because, and this is probably going to sound really bad, it's just crazy because the industry has pushed something different forever. But no one has ever been like, hey, you really don't have to do that. You know what I mean? Like, there's some ways around it. You know what I mean? And it's not necessarily reinventing the wheel. It's just trying to put some logic behind it. And I mean, I never go in thinking I know anything about whitetail deer, because I honestly feel like I'm almost coming at like a biologist standpoint where I just try to learn all the time. And I just, I started kind of thinking about this, and when we started this process, and it was like, man, this is working. Let's keep doing it. Let's keep trying it, and the longer you do it, the better it works. And then you see it to where, like, the deer are watching you dump feed. You're like, wow, this is insanity. Like, I would have never imagined this. But you can do it, and it ends up, man, like, it ends up being the where when you hunt, you may hunt and have 30 does around you, and you have does literally downwind of you that will stare at you, and they'll wind you, and they'll stare, but they never stomp, and they just go on about their day. And it's like, okay, well, this is working. Like, this is why I do what I do through the year. This is actually paying off now in the fall, and there's benefits from that. And I mean, there's this really cool ways to do it, and I would always tell guys, hey, just try it. I understand, feed's expensive, but man, you don't even have to, like, I always tell guys here, like, man, go buy 100 pounds of cracked corn from the co-op for $7 a bag, and then take one bag of Big Time and put it on top of it.
Right.
I mean, just anything. It doesn't have to be a ton, or just put out one bag of Big Time. It's just, you just don't have to, you don't have to feed to the capacity that I feed to, but ultimately it's just about giving them a positive thing every time you go through there, and ultimately you'll change the whole processor or the whole pressure system of your farm over time.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Yeah, it definitely has. It's definitely for you over the years I've known you, changed the reactions that you get from the deer. And I mean, like, you have just unlimited amount of proof to go along with this. I mean, I've been literally on the phone with you in your truck while you dumped the bag, and the deer, you hadn't even left, and you had like 7-8 does that one day. So it's just insane, like how it works, and all it is taking that little bit of time and effort, and then figuring out like, hey, this is the way I did it today. Let's see in a week how my pictures look, or 2 weeks, and then can I repeat that process again? And if you didn't get those right pictures, that should tell you like, hey, maybe I did something wrong. I can reevaluate this. And it's pretty much, that type of system where you can make those changes and implement it to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just always being observant, like, don't just thumb through your trail camera pictures and try to find a big deer and that's it. Like, I'm always trying to figure out how deer are acting at the pile. Are they nervous? Are they calm? Are they coming in on the wind side of it? Are they, you know what I mean? Like, there's things that you just can tell you a lot about how deer are going to perceive your intrusion by watching that stuff. And I'll be honest with you, every deer's different. I mean, every buck is different. I've got a buck that is just super cagey. I don't know if this deer, I don't know what happened to him, but something traumatic happened to him in his lifetime, because this deer will literally be on the pile and he will go completely inside out off the pile and run 20 yards and then come back and eat. And then blow complete. I mean, he does it, I would say, yeah, I mean, I would say off of, he's on the pile for 5 minutes. I guarantee you he's run off of it 4 times at least.
Wow.
It's just unreal. I have no idea why. The deer just does it. I thought maybe it was like clicking, like a camera was clicking that was getting him to do it. So I was running like my deltas on video because they record audio as well. And it's not. It's just like, I mean, the deer will be eating with 3 other deer there at the pile, and he'll just blow out there, and all the other deer like pick their head up, like, what is going on? And then he comes back. Wow. But some deer are different. So
yeah, just some learned reaction he's picked up.
Yeah, something about him, his personality, he just doesn't like, and whatever it is. But end of the day, I mean, you just kind of got to know those things, because when you go to hunt a deer, you need to know him. You need to know his personality. You need to know what he likes. You need to know, what he'll tolerate, what he won't, things like that. And the whole trick of killing a deer, in my opinion, of at least killing a deer that you really research and follow, is knowing what he can tolerate, right? Like, what you can get away with. So you may have a buck that won't let you get away with much intrusion on him. So you got to be a little bit more laid back on him. Let him kind of come to you and slip up. You may have a buck that'll tolerate you 100%. Those bucks, you go in and, I mean, I tell you, I pulled the camera. Yeah, I pulled the camera yesterday, and I went into a spot. I've got a buck that I know pretty well. I've got sheds off of him since he was 3. He's a 5-year-old this year. And I walked him a couple times last year at 4, and Boer hit a limb on him last year. He tried to kill him and hit a limb on him, and this deer, shows up within 3 hours. He daylights every time that I drive in and feed. No matter what spot it is on that farm, I feed a couple different spots on that farm, and whatever one he's closest to, I'll drive in and feed that, in the afternoon. And I was just looking, I left at, I think, 4 o'clock, 3:45 or 4 o'clock maybe on this last one. It was my last spot I fed, and he was there at 7 o'clock in the daylight, first deer on the pile. So it kind of gives me a key up to where I know, hey, if I've got to drive my side-by-side in to hunt this deer, it's probably going to be beneficial.
Right.
Right? Like, he knows the sound of that side-by-side. So I may be able to go to a spot I fed in the past, and, we always shut it down if that's the case. We'll shut it down 10 days before, but if I let that feed get out of there, I may be able to drive my side-by-side all the way to the blind and get out, and that deer may come just because he heard the side-by-side and thinks I fed the spot.
Right, yeah.
I mean, those are options, you know what I mean? Yeah. So you kind of just put all that away, you know what I mean?
Positive learned reaction. Yeah, and those are things like you just for me, when I say I always come into like a student, like those are things I always try to do
because I feel like, the deer you're hunting, if you know him inside and out, you know how he ticks and you know what he does, it just gives you that much more advantage to getting him killed.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn from if you take the time from those types of situations and not just blowing through your trail camera photos like you said and trying to figure out, because you said it perfect earlier about the one buck. Each one does have his or her own personality.
Oh yeah.
And there's a lot to be said to that and what you can learn and basically overall how we can hunt or pressure a piece of property.
Yeah, just what they'll tolerate. I mean, that's the big trick. It's so hard to kill a deer that won't tolerate much. It's tough.
Yeah, it is. Almost impossible.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm blessed enough to usually have 2 or 3 deer a year I could go after, and I'll put deer like that on the back burner. It's almost like a deer that you'd never had a daytime picture of.
Right. Yeah.
You put him on the back burner too. He's not nocturnal. You're just not in his circle.
Yeah.
So if I've got a different deer that I'm in his circle on, I should probably spend more time on him because, like you talked about, you're hunting 50% of the year, maybe.
Right.
Well, if it's all about efficiency, or if you can only hunt weekends, you probably better have your butt in the right stand that has the best odds. So all that kind of has to go into the factor of it, and for me, those are things I kind of, put a check mark in that box. If that deer is super jumpy, if he just won't really get on the program, or if I just can't really figure him out, then that deer is going to go down the list on kind of one we're going to target for the year.
Right. He's like a hopeful. You hope you may see him one day, but he's not really on the 18 list for what we're going after on this piece.
Yeah, right. He'll definitely be a rut buck. You know what I mean? Like he's a November project.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it all falls into it though,
So when you do this, Blake, and you're kind of leading up towards season, you guys, kind of get the luxury in Missouri to start September 15th, right?
Right, yeah.
Do you kind of stack it a little more or increase the feed, up until that? I know you said there's a 10-day gap there, you can't feed anymore, but do you push it late August, early September until that roundabout 10 days come, or do you kind of just keep the same system?
So it's kind of different for every situation. What I do, really in Missouri, the law is pretty gray. It just says an area can't be baited is how it is. So it doesn't even give you like a distance. So I always play it safe, and usually I will not feed a farm, the entire farm, if it's been fed. So I won't hunt a farm if it's been fed, essentially. So say I have a farm with like a great 3-year-old on it and really not a target buck, I'll just shut that farm off. I won't even hunt it, and I'll feed that farm through the fall to just try to keep him there, keep him alive, keep him healthy. But on a deer I'm trying to go after, we kind of see how he cores up as soon as he goes hardhorn. So if he, typically first week of September, by September 10th, 12th, usually opening day, we can pretty much tell what that deer is doing. And if he's still around quite a bit and he's still daylighting quite a bit, I'll shut the feed off and I'll move mobile cameras to scrapes, because usually scrapes come up around the mid to late September. And when those pop up, that's when I'll go to scrapes with the mobile cameras and kind of try to kind of figure him out off those scrapes, right? And shut the feed off and see if when the feed's gone, if he still sticks. 'Cause he should stick. If he stayed through hardhorn, he probably will stick around through,
right. Yep.
Through September at least.
Yeah.
And at that point, you kind of figure him out on what he's doing. I may go in and hunt him if I've got a good north wind. If I get a good cold front, I may go in and hunt him, but typically those don't fall for us until like the last week of September, first week of October. And I've had a lot of success killing deer between like September 27th and October 12th, 13th, somewhere in there. It just seems like we always get a really good cold front sometime in that time frame. But that'll be when I do my first hunt of the year. And it's extremely intentional. It's extremely, he's daylighted on the scrape in the morning or in the evening pretty recently. And it's where I'm pretty confident that I know I'm in his bubble, and I know that with the cold front, he'll be on his feet. So then I'll go in and I'll go after him. But I don't really push that. You know what I mean? I really let the data and the trail cameras kind of tell me if that's going to happen or not. And some years it happens, some years it doesn't. But ultimately, you know, I don't hunt just to hunt. I hunt with intent through September and October all the way to Halloween. Once Halloween comes, then it just becomes a matter of sitting your butt in a stand in an area.
There. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, that's,
getting there and putting it in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, for sure. So, but yeah, you're right about that first cold front. It's always a good time, and if you got some MRI on a deer, it's you know, a great time to strike. And part of that, or soon to be success, I would say, Blake, is because you haven't already been in there and burned up a spot just to be there. Hey, I'm hunting. I'm supposed to be hunting. It's
right.
The intent to be like, you know what, it's in my best favor if I stay out of here until these conditions are right, because the deer just know, like, don't go in there and blow out one of your best pieces that you may have a potential of 1 to 3 shooter bucks on just to be hunting, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he gets dumber every day once the velvet comes off. So every day you don't hunt him is a day that you get closer to having a better chance of killing him, if that makes sense. So for us, it's totally about just picking your battles. You only got to get it right once. So does it really matter if you get it right in September or you get it right in November? Doesn't. I mean, either one's fine. I would rather have better odds and get it right in November than I would to have, you know, go in on a 40% chance of seeing him and pull him out of there in September.
Right.
There's just no reason to.
Sure.
So no rush with it. I mean, that's why I travel a lot early, just to kind of keep me from making that mistake, because I made that mistake for many years.
Right.
You know, like, gosh, I used to be the guy who, like, I'd pop a big deer now and I'd go in and, like, hang sets on him. Like, no, that's, you know, end up not even hunting the set or end up not seeing the deer again.
Right.
It's like, there's just no reason to even try the pattern right now. It's just not. Now, if you're Kentucky, if you're Nebraska and you open up when they're in velvet, okay, I get it. But, or Kansas where you don't have to pull the feed.
Yeah.
I understand it. But in Missouri, you have to pull a feed, so everything's going to change. I mean, beans are going to change, acorns are going to drop, antler velvet comes off. Like, there's so much that changes in September that you're going to hunt. You're going to have a completely different deer on your hands September 15th than you do even September 1st. You know, just those 2 weeks, they change so much here that it's really in my opinion, it's a very low odd to go in and hang a set on a deer for what he's doing right now and kill him in September. I'll be honest, I've never done it in Missouri. It's never worked out for me, and I've tried a ton.
Yeah, you know what's crazy, Blake, is it seems to me every year, and this is, I'm just speaking in Michigan, and unfortunately I haven't had a lot of early season hunts out of state, you know, a couple, but not enough time to say, like, I have a answer to this. But it seems to me, at least in Michigan, Blake, and you can tell me what's going on in Missouri, but soon as that velvet comes off, there seems to be that gap there where you kind of got to play that role, like, you know, the cameras kind of dry up to me, at least with the bucks. Mm-hmm. They seem to really go underground for a moment while they dispatch and kind of that velvet comes off. And it's such a critical time to me to really remember, like, don't go out and even if I have a free time to do it, don't go out and check a camera. You know, I know the batteries are there, the SD card's there. It's going to be fine the next time I get to it. But it just seems that couple weeks there from Labor Day to like the 15th, those bucks are just on a critical high alert, and they just seem to be so underground. It takes a few days to kind of get back on them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know what it is about shed and velvet, but I've had so many bucks that I get pictures of daily or every other day, and I literally lose them for a week. Just, I mean, nowhere.
Yeah, out of nowhere.
I don't know what they do. I don't know what that you know, that testosterone and that change in their body makes them do, but they literally, you're absolutely right, will absolutely disappear, and you have no clue what's going on. You're like,
None
what?
Whatsoever. Yeah.
What is going on here? And I think to complicate that and to kind of add to it, in Missouri, our acorns drop then too.
Sure.
And a lot of our beans change that time frame as well. So, you have, like right now, you go out to a bean field in the evening, that's where all your bucks are. But as soon as that turns yellow, as soon as those beans start to change colors and the acorns drop, those deer are looking for the highest fat content they can get, which is acorns. And they're going to literally, I think they just go sit under a white oak tree and lay there and eat and gorge. Because, man, when you pick them back up late September, they put on 40 pounds. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they do. They gain a lot of weight. Yeah, that's for sure.
But I just don't think they move much with it. They still have to. I think they kind of go into a I don't need to disperse energy. I need to put on weight. I need to get ready for this. This is coming. And exactly. They know they're about 8 weeks out. They're 8 weeks out from the rut, and it's just time for them their body's telling them not to move a lot and to pack on the pounds they can, and that's what they do,
Yep. Exactly.
And the best, that's usually when I'll move the scrapes, and that's usually where I'll pick them up, because we usually by late September we start seeing scrapes, and they may just be a little, maybe the size of a basketball, but that's where we'll start moving cameras to those, and that's typically where you'll pick them back up at some point.
Yeah, for sure. That's always exciting to me because I'm like, I don't know if there's another play in the playbook, but that's just what I do, and I'm always like excited. Like, man, I can't wait to see who stuck around, who so and so looked
showed
like
up
out of velvet. Yeah, who showed up, and hey, instantly at some point now I'm back in the ball game because sometimes those scrapes are hit at daylight, some are hit like right before and right after, which tells me, hey, that bedding's very near. And I'm somewhat back in that ball game. And it's just like, probably with you, Blake, I'm like, yes, it's like a relief. Like, they're still there. They didn't leave Michigan. They didn't leave my farm completely. And, some do, like I do, which is just typical Michigan because so many properties are divided into 10, 20, 40 acre sections now, much smaller pieces that, 90% of my bucks will just be on the neighbor somewhere or a half mile away. And nothing you can do about that, but what you can do is just wait it out, get those cameras on a scrape and, see who's there, like I said, and then, get back after it. But I don't know. I'm just always excited when I pull that first one off the scrape and like, yes, so-and-so is still here.
Well, yeah, and there's something about, it's always a downfall to see them in hardhorn because they just never look as good as they did in velvet. But there's something about getting pictures of hardhorn deer that you're like, okay, now it's time to actually hunt them. You know what I mean? Like it's the fall now. You get your first, you get your first hardhorn deer, and you're like, okay, cool. And now you start seeing that rut activity, which is a great opportunity to kill a deer on. That's when they stop thinking with their gut and start thinking with their nuts. That's when they can become killable pretty easy.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, there's always a day or 2 days there, leading up to Halloween that a cold front or the right barometer, early evening, if you somehow are lucky enough to get in to that bedding, somewhere close within 100, 150 yards, there's a good chance he may be up early and you can see him, and it just gives you like that information that like, hey man, I can kill this deer, but it's all about being there and waiting for that right moment to strike and doing it the right way. And as we know, Blake, it's just all part of the puzzle, but it's just super exciting when it works out that way.
Yeah, absolutely. We can go back to the pressure thing. That's what I think, we've had a lot of success over is we don't pressure our doe herds at all. So what I really do is focus on them. And I focus on where my does stage off of food. My mineral licks always are on fire with scrapes and bucks using them because there's always does going to them. And it goes back to that same thing. It's almost like a late season mentality where we go in and we hunt, and you're going to have to walk, 10, 15 does get by you, or they're going to be around you before he shows up. But that's where, that's that strategy for me that time of the year is always I really, I'll hunt. I'm a little bit more laid back than what a lot of guys are with pressuring in on deer, and I'll lay back and hit a staging area where a bunch of does are going, where I'm getting a bunch of doe pictures, because that's where he's going to go. He's going to go check that. Yeah. So that's really where I'll focus October a lot, is going to be on those doe, either where those doe bedding areas are kind of on the edge of them, or where those does stage up before they go out to food. Because he won't daylight on the food typically. At least here, like, the does may go out in the bean field. They're going to get there at sunset, and then he may show up right at last light to hit the scrapes. But if you bounce in where those does hit it, an hour before sunset, where they're up milling around just in the timber, he's way more likely to be on his feet in there.
For sure.
And that's kind of, and those spots are so easy to find because it's just off of food. You just go in off of food and look for scrapes and rubs. I mean, they'll be loaded because that's where the deer spend the majority of their time. That and they're trying to show dominance, and they're trying to let every doe that goes through there know they're there. And so it's a really kind of becomes kind of one of those easier times to hunt them. You know what I mean? There's just not a lot of question marks with it.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, I agree.
I mean, that's when intel becomes pretty important.
Yep.
And
it does. Totally. Sorry, go ahead, Blake.
No, I was going to say, and I do a lot of that. I don't do a lot of that on foot. I'll do a lot of that on the side-by-side like we talked about. Just drive the edge and get in there to where I can kind of check and just drive a lot of times crops are coming out that time of the year too. Heck, there's so many times that I make sure the farmers let me know when they're harvesting, and I'll go in when they're harvesting and drive the edges to see kind of where those hot spots are into those cornfields or bean fields or whatever the case may be. Then I know, and if I have to go in and hang a set, I'll hang a set that day while they're in there harvesting. Yeah, it's just little things those are, that's when you start trying to be a little bit more sneaky than what you're going to be through the summer.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yep. That's funny. That's exactly what I had just was going to ask you is do you run the same process doing those cameras, with the side-by-side and trying to keep that routine as much of the same as you can? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I try to be as predictable as possible, but what I won't do is where I become unpredictable is when I move. So I'll have a camera on a scrape on an edge, and I'll base everything off that time frame. If he's within 30 minutes, then he's probably within 50 yards of that camera in the daylight. He's just inside. You know what I mean? He's not out on that edge. He's somewhere on the inside. So that's when I'll do something like wait for a windy day, wait for the harvest, something to where I can get in. And heck, I've even had it where I drive my side-by-side right in there, leave it idling, and put the stand up. Right. Drive out in the middle of the day. I mean, those things, because once you build that positive interaction with them, they don't think anything about that side-by-side sitting over there idling, and they're probably going to come check it out to see if you dumped a pile over there.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, they really are.
It's the same interaction as what they feel about the farmers on the combine. It's the same thing. They just don't let it bother them. So.
Yeah, and he doesn't know. I mean, he just doesn't. They aren't smart enough to know, just because you're in a tree and in camouflage, that you're not the same. It's not the same scent they just smelled and ate off of all year long in the summer.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't know you're hunting. So again, it's just not. It just seems to be that process has just seemed to be so much better than trying to get away with scent control and thinking this big misconception that you're undetected, because you're not.
It's impossible. Yeah, every time you breathe, you're omitting scent, and it is impossible. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's better off to let them pick you and expect it and be all right with it. You know what I mean? It's just a lot less intrusive.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, I know, Blake, that you got a couple really good shooters on these couple new farms, and I know that obviously I'm pretty sure we'll be back together here shortly and talk again on the podcast probably after some Nebraska and some other hunts. But as always, man, I'm always excited for you. You always end up shooting a great one on your own piece that you manage and work for. So, I'm excited for this upcoming season, see what happens for you.
Yeah, man, that's the fun part. So I'm pretty excited about this year. We do have some great deer, and got some deer that we have a lot of history with. Got some new faces that we didn't know that have kind of moved in. But yeah, you never know. I get this time of the year, everybody's getting amped up, and I'm getting messages and phone calls and everybody's talking about deer and what to do, and man, which one are you going to go after? And it's like, it's way too early. It's just, there's so much that can happen right now. You know, you just kind of, I've had so many years, I got my hopes up and I've picked out a deer and I'm like, I'm going to kill him, and EHD will come through, or freaking he'll just disappear on me, or, you know, it's just so much that can happen in the next month and a half, that you just kind of play it by ear and try to keep tabs on as many big ones as you can. And you know, come September, I'll probably be able to give you a definitive answer on who's going to get some time put on him and who's not. Right. But as of right now, it's just, stick to the inventory game, stick to the process, and work it through, and hopefully we're set up for success. We'll see.
Yep, that's all you can do, man. So it is part of this process, and if you listen to this podcast, you know, listen to that part, you know, is so important, is that process. Like what Blake does or what I do may not work for you, but something in there may tell you, like, hey, this is where I can start my process, and then I can go A, B, and C, and it will just help you be a better hunter. Me and Blake are in Michigan and Missouri, and I do a lot of the similar things that Blake does, and I hunt totally different farm ground, like flat, no bottoms, no nothing, but there's some of that similar process that I use to just be safe and secure. Don't really get too excited till, like, you know, after that velvet comes off, and then really start to hone in on how we can do this. So, but, you know, each their own, and I know, Blake, man, there's just always proof in your pudding, and it's always cool to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely, man. If anybody ever has any questions, I mean, I answer a ton of questions on Instagram every day about stuff and try to help out if we can. And again, it's like you said, it's a perfect example of, I'm not trying to tell anybody how to do anything, but it's just a matter of, this has worked for me, and it's been something that I think a lot of guys could have success and could put, you know, some more deer on the wall for you if you definitely adapt some of it.
Absolutely. Yep, that's why we do this, you know, and put out podcasts like this, and you put out content is not just to gloat or anything like that, but it's to make us all better, and to ultimately pass along how great the sport is, and how many cool things you can do on any budget. So
absolutely.
But all right, Blake, man, I'll let you go. I know you're busy with some other stuff, but excited to have you back, man, and can't wait till we do it again.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's good talking to you.
Yeah, you too. And as everybody knows, you can find us every week, iTunes, Amazon, Unfiltered Outdoor app. And as always, deer season never ends. We'll see you guys again next week.